Lucas Lanthier. I represent Godin Guitars, who also makes Seagull, Art and Lutherie, some of the instruments that you see here in the shop. And thank you for coming out tonight to see Doyle Dykes. He is our premier brand ambassador, and he's going to show off some of the instruments tonight. And I think he's one of the best people we could think of to test these guitars out for you and show you what they can do. So without further ado, Mr. Doyle Dykes.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucas. I get that. All right, thanks. It's good to be back at Pitbull Audio. What a great place, and what a cool name too. Pitbulls are kind of scary, but we also know they can be very, very sweet. And I'm a dog guy, so anybody names their company after a Pitbull, I mean, that's pretty cool. And I'm glad to say my new signature model finally came out this year, and they've been back ordered, and it's been a very popular thing, which is a really good thing. I'm thankful for that. But as you can see, you can country it, you know, and it just has a really great sound. Very dynamic. I have all kinds of guitars. Well, it all started back in '65. That's when I first realized I wanted to do something for my Lord. Just like my daddy and my Uncle Smitty, I love guitars. They sounded so pretty, and I knew that's just what I was looking for. My first guitar was a silver tone. Wore my fingers to the bone. Played so hard my fingers got so sore. I knew the guitar was for me. It was bound to be my destiny. Ever since that time, I've been guitar poor, guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, won't you help me? I'm guitar poor, guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, have mercy on the guitar poor. I got flat tops, arch tops, steel string, gut string, solid body, hollow body, 6-string, 12-string, acoustic, electric, and resonators and more. I got cutaways, non-cutaways, upper cutaways, flame tops, gold tops, jumbos, dreadnoughts, double offs, triple offs, and man, I'm guitar poor, guitar poor, guitar poor. Sorry, y'all. Lord, won't you help me? I'm guitar poor, guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, have mercy on the guitar poor. knows me pretty well, I guess. I was mopping the floors and making the beds, and she knew I was up to something for sure. I ran outside my pickup truck. Wouldn't you know it's just my luck? She hollers out, I know you're headed to Pitbull music store. There's just one thing I should have grabbed first. That checkbook that was in her purse. She stood there waving it at the door. I said, come on, honey, now, baby, please just give me the checkbook so I can leave. She says, Doyle, how many guitars do you need? And I said, just one more. Guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, won't you help me? I'm guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, have mercy on me, guitar poor. This big. Get in there. Chet Atkins. Come on, Chet. James Brown. Oh, come on. Guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, won't you help me? I'm guitar poor, guitar poor, guitar poor. Lord, have mercy on the guitar poor. That's all of us. We're guitar rich, aren't we, guys? Well, I have to say, Lucas, I use a lot of guitars when I recorded that song, but the main guitar was a multi-act throughout that whole song. And I use an old gold top, and I use an old Gretsch, old stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, I'd go by this guy's barber shop, and he could give you a haircut and a guitar lesson. You know, not at the same time, of course, but. And he'd always had this old Gretsch there, and he left both of his old orange Chet Atkins Gretches to me, put that on there. Things like that, but the main one throughout the whole song was a little multi-act. These guitars are really great. How in the world did this start, Lucas? Now you're a representative of Godin Guitars. Come up here.
Actually, we have somebody writing in who has your signature model, and they love it.
Oh, good.
And also Fort Worth is watching.
Fort Worth.
So hi to Fort Worth.
It's always on my mind. Has it ever crossed your mind, Lucas?
Constantly.
Yeah. Well, it has me. I was just in Texas last week, in fact. And in fact, I've been doing some recording work out there in Austin. I do a lot of recording in Texas. There's so many great guitar players. They're all over the place, but there are a lot of great pickers in Texas. And yeah, I love this guitar. You know, Robert Godin, of course, he started this company back in what year was that?
He took over Norman Guitars in the 1970s.
Come on over. You can come over here. I have one of these. You don't have one of those. So there you go. Yeah.
So Robert Godin started with Norman Guitars in the 1970s, a Canadian brand, and eventually, it's an acoustic guitar line. But he started applying his own innovations to six-string instruments, and that eventually in the 80s resulted in this line of guitar, the multi-act.
Yeah.
And all different versions of it, too. Some of them you guys might be familiar with the little 13-pin MIDI cable that you can attach to some of them for controlling guitar synths. Doyle's signature models, yet another variation on this multi-act theme. The whole point started as a no feedback live guitar. So you could get an acoustic sound, either nylon string or steel string, and not have feedback in a live situation. And it kind of branched out from there. That's what started it. And now there are so many variations, and this is a perfect example of fine-tuning it. And
so basically, as a friend of mine in California here builds some custom guitars like this. Kirk Sand is his name. Now his guitars are, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. but he calls them a nut bowl, and that's basically the same thing. Now, years ago, Chet Atkins, in fact, Chet Atkins gave me one of his guitars. He gave me one of his that looks kind of like this. It was a nylon string guitar, one of his personal. I'll never get rid of that.
Is that one of the Gibson ones?
One of the Gibson, yeah. But it was pretty heavy, I have to be honest with you. And it was a great sounding guitar, had a lot of sustain. But then when Robert came out, whoever came up with, I don't know, I'm not sure, but they hollowed this out and they braced the top. And so you still get a guitar. I recorded a song with this guitar. I didn't think I'd like it. I thought, well, I have another song that I'd like to do. And I mean, it was in the studio, and I thought, I had a very expensive guitar, and so I thought, well, I think I might just try it on the new signature model. And we mic'd it, and there was this Telefunken mic, and the mic's probably worth $20,000. And it was over my shoulder here, it's kind of like that. It was real big. And I had not think about it, And then we had another expensive mic here, an old Neumann. And on this little guitar, I thought, well, what's it going to sound like? We didn't know. It was amazing. Went through an old twin reverb and then went through the board to a Neve console. And oh, my Lord. And it sounded good. And I was playing a slower song, and it was a gospel song. And have thine own way, thou art the potter, and I am the clay. It's pretty amazing. Needless to say, we left it on the record. We left it on there, and I had no idea. It was the first time I took it out in the studio, because to me this was designed for stage. But let me tell you something, it works really nice in the studio too. It's amazing. When Robert and I first got to know him, I'd never heard a bad thing about that guy. I mean, I've known about him for years and years, And but when I got to know him, we were riding around up in the northern part of Canada, going to a gig that we had up there. And he says, Doyle, we would like for you to help us design a new guitar, and we'd like to come out, maybe at the NAMM show or show it or something like that. I said, well, I don't know why you would want my help on, but at the same time, he said, well, what would you want to do? I said, well, I'm an acoustic guitar player, but what you do with a multi-act, nobody does. And I said, if you would want something fairly quickly that we can work with, I said, this body style they already had, and I loved it. I thought it was just perfect. I just love it. Feels right. It's the right size. But if you want me to put my spin on it, I said the first time I ever saw the name L.R. Baggs was on a Godin guitar. And it was right up here, and it's L.R. Baggs. It was on they call it the Acousticaster. You remember that? And I thought, what a cool guitar. And I didn't know who L.R. Baggs was. And then, of course, years later, I've worked with him on different companies. I was with Taylor. Everybody knows that. Taylor's right here in this town. And he worked with me on a project with them. And then when I went on with Fender, and they asked me to help with a guitar, and then he was right in the middle of that. And when I went with Robert Godin, I said, you were the guy basically that introduced me to him. Not personally, but you did. And I said, I would love for you guys to get back together on a great project. And I said, this would be a lot of fun. And man, I'm telling you, Lloyd went all out on this thing. And I'll tell you what it does. But let me pick a little bit more. Pause right there. Let me show you what this is. Actually, it's an LB6. LB6 is what I have on. I even had those on Olsen guitars. I mean, that's all Mr. Olsen will put in his guitar. Of course, you know who plays those is James Taylor, and that's all he's used for many, many years is the LB6. It's what Phil Keaggy uses. It's what Paul McCartney uses. It's still a staple in the business. It's the best sounding. I think, to me, I just think it sounds better than anything for what I do. I just love it. I feel comfortable with this pickup. And it's just so full, just even by itself. Now, this has a great EQ. I mean, to do a Travis song like I just did, you got to have that bottom end, pumping out, And this... For a guitar that size, this big, I mean, that's a lot of bottoming. And it doesn't sound over woofy. You know what I'm saying? Now here it is with just the pickup. Give it a little more treble. Can you get a little more air out of it? Now I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. Now what I want to do is add what this is a mic, and I'll turn the volume down just a little bit and push this up. And this is pretty much all mic. So there's a mic inside. Hear that? So what I do, no, you don't hear it, see? So what I do is I just do this. And when I hear it coming on, I stop because I just want a little bit of air on it, and I like a lot of this pickup as well. Put my volume back here. Now, so here it is, just pickup. Now here it is with some added mic. Now, this is what L.R. Baggs brought into this to make this guitar sound as big as it did a while ago. It's called the Session DI. And there are two things, compression, multi-band compression, and harmonic distortion. Those two things are the major components when they master a record. Am I right, guys? When you master an album, it was those two things. Multi-band compression, not a compressor like you have on a guitar compressor on the floor. Nothing like that. It just tightens it up and brings it all together. And then harmonic distortion, which makes it just sound mellow. What else causes harmonic distortion? A tube and a tube amp. Well, that's built right here into this guitar. It's not a tube, but it emulates a tube. And so this is the Session DI. That's without it. See how it just rounded the top end? Now I'm going to turn it back off. Turn it up. I mean, it's when it's something that's that noticeable, I just leave it on. You know, it's like a talent button, so I push it. So it's a lot like an acoustic guitar and electric too. All right, any questions? Anybody?
We've got a fellow asking if you take requests. If so, he'd love to hear a version of Saturday Night Shuffle. I don't know if that's
Saturday Night Shuffle. Okay, also, let's see. Did I get them mixed up? Okay. That's it, but I'm not sure. If it's not Saturday Night Shuffle, it's one of those that he does. But what a great guitar player, Merle Travis. His bass pattern was on. It's like a stride. Well, actually, more like a honky-tonk piano player. Boom, blum, blum, blum. My thumb is my left hand. If I was playing a piano, yeah. Now Chet did more of a perfect bass. I say a perfect bass. He had a 1 to 5 like that. Boom, 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 and the rhythm after beat. Merle. Chet. Merle. Merle Travis and Chet Atkins style. And I gleaned from all of those guys, you know. Then you sort of, you learn that Chet didn't do that on everything, you know. I wrote a song years ago, and it's called Jazz in the Box, where it's just, and I would go back and forth sometimes on that thumb. I don't always do that on, I don't do that on hardly anything, maybe one or two songs I've ever done that. When you're doing that, you're trying to sound like two guys because you can't afford that other guy all the time, you know. And he's probably going to be late for the plane and everything else. But so you let that first guy ring out. Just let him sustain. Don't touch him. I so touched him, didn't I? Play it different the second time. How in the world does that work? Listen, can you believe that works? I don't know if it's an audio illusion. Maybe it's a Pitbull illusion. I don't know, but two-handed harmonics. And you're just sliding it down. String band. Now let me explain something. That's one reason the Godin guys, you know, all the other multi-acts have slotted headstocks. They all had those, except mine. And it was just very difficult. And I had to say, they went to great lengths trying to accommodate my string bend. They even put one thing they did was they put a big slot here, you know. And then another thing they did, they actually made a little device that I could just push up somehow and it would bend it, you know, and which was so cool. It was very thoughtful. But I thought all you really need is a solid headstock, you know, and so that's all I needed. And so they did it after all those years. And they said, well, give Doyle what he wants. And so this kind of helps me be able to do the things that I play, the style that I play, and a lot of you guys do that too. And so I just take two fingers, and it's real easy to do on this guitar, and I push up towards the ceiling. And it still sounds really good, really nice and full, easy to change the strings on the guitars. And I do wrap these things around, and I twist them off. I don't leave a little piece of string because it will stick you. And when you're doing, you come in, you know, and I don't care how big you are, how big a boy you are, as I already, you'll cry like a girl. Anyway, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But I had that happen one time. I had a little piece of string break off in my finger, and I was playing. And I was going back and forth real fast, and I stuck that thing, and I went, when I came back there, it buried itself in my finger. That's one time I just quit playing. I said, excuse me, folks. That hurt. And so anyway, I found a way to just, If you go to my website, I have a whole section of that and a lesson on how I change strings. I'm not saying you have to change strings like that, but if you want to do this kind of stuff, it helps because you can wind them around. It's like tying a little tie in it, and then you can just twist it off. You don't have to cut it with cutters and all that kind of stuff. It just twists off. And I found out by breaking one time, I thought, oh no, it broke. Now what am I going to do? Because I would take this thing and I would make a loop, and push it real far, as close to as I could with needle nose pliers. And one time it broke. I'm going, oh no, I was about to go on the show, and it didn't come off. I thought, I'll try that again. And it didn't come off. And I did all of them that way. And I've done it all there ever since. It's been probably 15 years that I've been putting strings on like this. Now watch it go, pow! Eric Johnson asked me to record something on his new record. He's doing another acoustic album, and I was on the other one. And somebody brought a Eric Johnson record up to me as LP. And so would you sign my Eric Johnson record? I said, well, I don't know what Eric would say about that. He said, well, you're on it. I said, I am? Let me see that record. And it was the album I thought, I never got one of these. So he gave me one last week, and he signed it. But he's doing a new album, and I so did all over it, man. I said, man, I just countryfied yours. He did a thing on for my record. I have an album up here called Bridging the Gap, and there's a song I wrote called Red Clay. And I told him, I said, don't cover up all my good stuff. And he just made it his own thing, just like it's a rock anthem or something. It's amazing. And so I countryfied his song out. And it was a lot of fun. But I did it like this. And it's a G chord, but everything is a G except this. Instead of being a B, it's an A. And then you pull it up to a B, and it becomes a G chord. Like that. Isn't that cool? Those are steel guitars. Licks. Da 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 da. Anyway, I did that on the Grand Ole Opry years ago. In fact, y'all ever heard of RFD TV? Do you ever get RFD? Rural Channel? And they have a cowboy channel. My mom watches it all the time. And she said, you were on RFD the other night, which really impressed my 90-year-old mother, I tell you. So I was good with it. And then I like the check. I got paid more for them running it over than I did when I did it. And because you don't get paid hardly anything on the Great Ole Opry, so it's just not that kind of a thing. But somebody told me, said, well, I like that song you did, but I wrote it. Nobody knew what it was, but as long as I did this, I think that's all they cared about, And so the next thing, I thought, well, a friend of mine, his name was Billy Grammer. Do y'all remember Billy Grammer? You remember the Grammer guitar? Does anybody remember a Grammer guitar? You know who really likes their Grammer guitar? Joe Bonamassa. When you see him play in his acoustic set, he'll normally always have this old Grammer. And that's what when you would see the Porter Wagner show and all back in the day, you know, when he'd use a Martin in the early days or a Gibson or something, then he would use this Grammar guitar, and they had these real cool pick guards, and some of them were green and some of them were blue, and they were just cool guitars. Well, Billy was a friend of mine. He got me the job, or recommended me for the job with Grandpa Jones, so he was pretty close. And he said, why don't you play something they like, or play something they know, is what he said. And I said, well, he said, I like that thing you do, but they don't know that song. Why don't you play something that the people know, you know? He said, it's kind of like this guy that gives it with the accordion. You mean, he said, I remember this guy, he was a big guy, and he got it with an accordion, and he stretched it across his big belly, and he would start shaking it like, and the crowd went crazy. And he said, we knew he wasn't really doing anything, but it went over, you know? And that's kind of what you're doing with that little Okay. And so he said, well, but why don't you use that on something people know, because people like that little gimmick. And I said, okay. And the next thing you know, she's a combination on the Wabash Cannonball from Mr. Roy Acuff, who I knew very well. Chet Atkins style bass. Dobro. Just shake it around. Combination on the Wabash Cannonball, gotta speed it up. Thanks very much. So this is my guitar. This is a new Doyle Dykes signature Godin multi-act guitar. Just my spin on it. Actually, you know, what I really did is I got Robert and L.R. Baggs back together on a project. And I told somebody it's kind of like heaven and earth kissed, and this little guitar got caught right in the middle of the smack. And this is the product of that. And so it's a great little guitar. It works. What can I say? It works. I actually told them last year, I said, don't put my name on that. You don't even have to do that. I said, I didn't have that. I mean, I helped along with that, and it was some ideas that we put together. But it's their genius. It really is. But I'm happy. I'm happy that they did. That's all I can say. Any questions about anything?
Yeah, does it come with those songs built in?
It does, yeah. And if you can't do that in 50 years, you get your money back. That's how long I've been playing over 50 years now, so I've been doing this a long time. But I have to say, I really enjoy playing this guitar. I really do. It surprised me that it turned out as good as it did. I hate to say that, but it did. It actually surprised me. I knew it was going to be good, but this thing, I mean, it's amazing. I've had a lot of my friends said, I can't believe, even Eric, you know, he's like Mikey. He hates everything, you know. Oh, just kidding. Eric's an amazing musician, but he's critical on sound in a good way. But when he tells you something is good, you know, that's a cool thing. All right. Are we good? All right. I think I still have this one on, right? Okay. I also use, I have the Sonics amplifier that's also distributed by Godin, and I use that all over the world. Of course, I'm a tube guy. I still love tube amps too. So a lot of times I'll pair it up with my Rivera or an old vintage Fender or something like that. I did that last time I think I was here, didn't I? Yeah, we didn't do it this time, but this is an amazing thing. And I also use, these guys are Zoom dealers, and I use this AC3. I didn't think I'd like it either. I mean, they said, well, why don't you try our new acoustic preamplifier? Or preamp, you know, I'm thinking, he's got effects on it and all that, you know, and it does this and yeah. I said, well, you know, and I said no. And so it was about a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years later, I said, well, I said, go ahead and send me that. I'm not trying to sound crass or something. I just didn't know that I'd like it, you know. I didn't want to be and tell them I didn't like it, but I loved it. And I was in the studio this week. And there's a guy, David Huff, David and the Giants. He had one of the first gospel rock bands. And they used to be on Warner Brothers. I mean, he used to record at Muscle Shoals, him and his two twin brothers, Rayburn and Claiborne. And David Huff, and he called it David and the Giants. And the other giant was a guy named Keith Thibodeau, who was about that tall. And Keith was the original Little Ricky Ricardo from the I Love Lucy show. When he was a little kid, he was Little Ricky. His name is Keith Thibodeau. And they just got back. I think David's probably 70 years old now, maybe, or close to it. Maybe over, I don't know. And they just got back from Ireland. They just got back from the Philippines. And so they're still... But he was the one that had that old Telefunken mic and all this. He's got a great studio, and he has an old Neve console and all. And so I put this up. I said, well, let me try this little effect. He says, well, what is that? In that pedal? And I said, yeah. And he said, I love that. And he's from Mississippi. He said, brother, that thing sounds good. And it's amazing. It does. It really sounds great. My son-in-law is a bass player, and so he plays acoustic bass, and it has an acoustic setting, and so you can model whatever you like. And those things usually I don't like. You know, I've had a lot of my friends, oh, this has got a modeling thing and the mic and all this stuff, but this sounds incredible. It really does. And this is what I use. So I started leaving my pedal board at home, and it has I have one pedal for one setting, which they call pad on here. Others call it shimmer, and then there's another word for it. And I just use that pedal for that one thing. It costs more than this whole unit does, and this does that too. And that's what we used on the record, because I did a song about heaven, and we wanted a sort of an angelic sound, and we just mixed it in. And so they sell these here, but this is what I use. This is the preamp, and it has XLR outs. It has everything you can imagine. It has reverb with tone on it, like the old reverb tanks. You can actually turn the treble up on the reverb itself. So it's an amazing thing. So it doesn't cost that much money anymore. Where used to, it was thousands of dollars to get a great sound. And but you don't have to spend that kind of money anymore, thank God. And Godin is a part of that factor as well, and they're very proud of that they build a quality instrument that you don't have to break the bank to get, right? All right. Now, I like expensive guitars as well as anybody, but it's kind of nice to know, you know, that this guitar, as good as it is, it can be replaced. So it's not like you're taking your old Martin out or something, you know what I mean? And it works great. It's easy to take around and play. And I mean, there are times sometimes you don't know. People think, man, what a great lifestyle you have. You know, I remember last year I played at a great big church. And after church, the pastor said, hey, why don't you join us for refreshments? So I left about midnight. Next thing you know, I'm being chased around by a gang all over the north side of Philadelphia. And they just wouldn't leave me alone. I finally got away from them, thank God, and I'm still alive. But I thought, well, I'm not taking that expensive guitar around with me anymore. But you just never know. I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy thing. Anybody else, how'd I get on that? That has nothing to do with Godin Guitars, but maybe it does. I don't know. One of my favorite guitars to play is not in the past. I have played guitars at 12 strings, $13,000, $14,000 instruments, you know, and I love them. I mean, I think they're great. I mean, I have an old Martin 12 string, and it's a great guitar. Wait to hear this. This thing is amazing. It's amazing, amazing sound. And they have one here. This is an A12, and just an incredible little guitar. It sounds really great. When you're coming down with a thumb pick, though, you're actually coming down, and then your fingers are coming up. And so I switched, like the old Rickenbacker, I switched these around. I didn't know Rickenbacker did that for a long time, but they did. So there's nothing new under the sun. You think you have a great, I have a new idea. No, you don't. They did that in the 50s, you know. And the Beatles, had their guitars had that on there. And so when you're speaking of the Beatles, you know, going to hold it right there, and I'm going to switch guitars. This is mine. I've played this literally all over the world. I've had this for 2 or 3 years, and here's one that belongs to Pitbull. Okay, just as quick as I can plug it back in. Haven't done anything of this, not switch the strings around, and that's an easy thing to do if you want to do that. There are guys here can do this for you. Now, I had to say, You know, when I'm doing it on mine, when I switch those strings around, I can feel it more than you probably can hear it. But it's a physical thing on the guitar. You know, you just got. You can still hear the other one, but a lot of times the other little string gets muted. You still hear the bass string. You know, you just get a more powerful bass, and it sounds like it has an effect on it, but it's just changing the strings backwards. That's the only thing you're doing. I had a signature guitar with Guild, and it was a Doyle Dykes model, and they made all of them that way. They switched them, and Guild's they were known for their 12 strings, you know, and so anyway, and Ren Ferguson said, "Oh man, I get it, because the way you play." Yeah, and I said, "Yeah, that's pretty." I mean, it's just thinking of, you know, people say, "How do you think of that?" I said, "Well, I drive a lot." And sometimes you're just driving, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you think about it. I woke up the other night and I was thinking about the "And Can It Be" arrangement that I was about to go play at the studio, and I every time I wake up I'd think about it, you know, and so anyway, music gets in. A lot of probably some of the best songs I've ever written, I didn't have a guitar in my hand. I wrote it in my head, and then I went back and played it. An example is Guitar 2000. And you can't hear this. I'm sorry, guys. I should have. I'm not thinking. I'm not. Okay. Sorry about that. Now this is the A6, which come up here and tell them what this is, and I'll get a strap, and it'll make more sense coming from you, because you can tell them what it is, and I'll just get one of these guitar straps, or I'll just get a stool here.
Yeah. So Doyle has been demonstrating the A12. This is the 6-string version, and the intent behind this guy is to be able to go back and forth between an acoustic guitar sound and an electric guitar sound. You see we've got a pickup in here, and so you can either blend it or go back and forth and have a straight acoustic or a straight electric guitar tone, which is typical of, I think, what Godin is doing with the line of products, is to give you a lot of tone options, a lot of times all in the same instrument. Some of our solid body electric guitars, for example, you can get about 30 different tones depending on the configuration, between pickups, between our active circuits that you can engage, between blending and so on and so forth. So with one instrument, they want you to be able to solve a lot of your musical problems or challenges, whatever you're trying to tackle. So the A6 is designed specifically for that.
Hey, by the way, what is my 12 string? I was talking about a while ago. I mean, years ago, Bob made me a guitar. It was 13.5, and I played it on the road, you know. But there's a command about this little guitar. It just fills up a room. I would play that anywhere, in a big auditorium. In fact, I'm playing at a church this weekend. I think they must run 7 to 10, 12,000. I don't know the people.
Oh wow!
Because they have Saturday night, 3 Sunday morning things, and then a Sunday night. And it's just back to back all the time. There are just thousands of people. I'm using my signature guitar and the A12 for the whole thing, you know. And it just fills, and it's a huge room, you know. And I would play those anywhere, on the Grand Ole Opry, whatever, because they work. But let me ask you this, because I'm not quite sure, but what does that guitar cost? What would that guitar cost here? Do you know?
$900.
$900.
I believe the A12 right now is $899. Yeah.
There you go, $899. That's what I'm talking about. It's amazing.
You had a whole bunch of people, by the way, chiming in from around the country and the world who were happy you picked up that A12. They wanted to hear some 12 strings.
Oh,
And
yeah.
right when they started writing about it, you picked it up. That was really good timing.
I like to write songs, too, on the 12-string, but this is kind of the old idea of Billy Graham. Why don't you play something people know, you know? One of my favorite things to play is Freebird on a 12-string because, I mean, come on. How are you going to sound like Alan Collins on a guitar, especially acoustic, any acoustic? But on the 12-string, it becomes like a big sound, and it's like an anthem. And it's just, everybody knows from the time you start, it's a tribute. That's what it is. It's a tribute. Where's, oh yeah, must plug in. Okay, here we go. And I heard Charlie Bird today on the plane, and I just kept listening over and over some of those songs that he did. And Charlie Bird was great, jazz. And then Chet Atkins got a hold of that with Les Paul. I was at the Reading one night. I said, I play it, Les. I said, I never did really know that song. I said, he won a Grammy on it. Chet with it. Let's see if I can change it up a little bit. I don't know how to do that. Okay.
Doyle, if you go to the other output jack.
Oh, that's what it was. I forgot there are two on there.
Right now you're doing a straight electric guitar, just going off the pickup.
Okay, you're right. That's why he gets the big bucks, folks. And indeed I do. Oh my, do I, honey, indeed I do. I played this stuff at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society convention a few weeks ago. And I didn't know I was going to play it. I just started playing it, you know. I played it on my signature guitar, but it's all Chester and Lester stuff, recorded right there in Nashville. I played this the day of Chet's funeral on the Grand Ole Opry. Lover, come back to me. I remember every little. Lover, come back. Lover, come back to me. That's without any practicing or anything on this guitar, but I like this. This is amazing. I have to say, these guys know how to put this kind of pickup and this kind of pickup together better than anybody I've ever seen. And that's pretty cool. That's saying quite a bit. And I have an old guitar, a friend of mine, he put the pickups that go in the saddle, and then there's batteries and wires and switches and all that kind of, and here it is right here in a nice, neat little package. Isn't that cool? And it sounds really good. And what does this guitar cost?
Same price, $8.99.
$8.99. I didn't even tune this guitar, did I? I don't think. Are there any other questions about anything?
We've got people watching from Colorado Springs, North Carolina, Georgia,
All right.
Portland.
Welcome to Pitbull Audio. Let's do something that you wouldn't normally expect to do on a guitar like this. Welcome, everybody. That's really great. Y'all have nothing else to do on Friday night? Now, those are pretty interesting places you just mentioned. All the way from Carolina to Colorado. Georgia?
Yeah.
That's right up my back door, Georgia.
All up and down the West Coast.
Well, like I said, I've been recording in Georgia the last few days, and boy, I've had so much fun doing that. It's actually a worship record, and it's old songs that I've done that I used to do, and I don't have them on record anymore, and people still want to hear them, like "How Great Thou Art" and the Lord's Prayer and things like that. And Eric Johnson actually asked me if I would record that at his studio. He said, "Would you record that beautiful music in my room?" And there's something to be said about those old spiritual songs. There's one that's called Deep River. Boy, it just draws blood. When you play it, I mean, you just feel something, you know. It's an amazing old song. Sometimes you don't know what a guitar is capable of doing until you do something that you wouldn't normally do on a guitar like this. And that's what I enjoy doing. And you know, it's an instrument, but it's just what you do with it, you know. And anyway, boy, what a loss of Aretha Franklin this week. I told my mama, she said, she's been around, I mean, popular singing for a long time. I said, Mom, when I was a little boy, my mom might be 90, but she got plenty of sense, let me tell you. She's a sharp lady. And she said, well, she was something. And she was. And she was one of those few people in the world that can just open her mouth and brilliance comes out. I'll tell you who said that. I didn't make that up. James Taylor said that. And I just appreciate the effect that she's had and the influence that she's had on so many, not only singers, but musicians, players, musicians that would try to emulate a singer. That's what horn players do. And then guitar players that try to emulate what they do. And so it all comes together in a beautiful way. What a gift. Music is a gift. It's a gift from God. It really is. I mean, you can't calculate all this stuff as just being, you know, from human hands. There's something deep about it. It just goes down to the dirt. It really does. Music is a wonderful thing. It really is. I'm so thankful for it. It can soothe the heart. Even in the Bible. I mean, remember Saul, the king? He said, provide me now. He said it, provide me now a man who can play well and bring him to me. Which, to me, I think sort of indicated there's somebody in there who couldn't play very good. I'm thinking in my mind, and get this guy out of here, you know. Oh man! So it helps to play our best, you know. I've never tried to set out to be the best guitar player in the world. That's an impossible task for anybody. I don't care who you are. I just want to be the best I can possibly be myself, and that's all you can expect out of anybody, including you. And so just have fun with it. That's the main thing. My son's a great guitar player, and he just got back from Japan. He took his guitar with him. He was over there a month and learning the language, and now I think he's wanting to move over there. I think he's got a girl, that's what I think, but anyway, maybe. But he sure has, I don't care where he goes, he'll have that guitar with him. And he met the mayor of the city where he was, and I think it was actually in Nagasaki. And it's amazing how he had such favor when he would play his guitar, you know. People say, well, he's learning how to speak Japanese, but he can already play in Japanese. Yeah. Any questions about anything else, anybody? But I don't want to keep y'all too long. And we have the Seagull line, and Seagulls, I have one myself. I use it on my last record that I did, latest album. And yes, you have a...
Did you want to ask?
Great, okay.
Yes, I noticed you used a thumb pick. Are your fingers nails natural, or do you glue something on? Or
No, these are acrylic, and I just had them done this week. If you look, see how thick those are.
yeah, I see.
And
that's the only way to play with those kind of steel strings, right?
well, when I was in the studio with Eric the other day, I was kind of freaking out because before I left, my nail lady was on vacation. And I'm going, oh no, what am I going to do? And I put super glue. And when I come out here, my hands dry up. I did a little slide a while ago, and it cut right into my little finger. It's the dryness of the air. You know, you're probably used to it, and I'm not. And being on a plane all day didn't help either, you know. And being in the studio and working every day. So I had to think, I was thinking a while ago, what did we do without super glue, you know? But I would put it on my fingernails, but she tore all that off, and then she builds them up, and these are acrylic. And then I have a thumb pick that was made for me, and it's by Fred Kelly. I talked with Fred yesterday. He's the sweetest guy. I used to try my best. I would go all over. Every time I go to Nashville or anywhere, I go to music. Do you have any Fred Kelly speed picks? And I remember one time 2 of them lasted me for like a couple of years because I couldn't find them. And now he makes them for me and makes the shank a little bit longer, you know. And this is the first black ones he's ever made. I thought they were so cool. And it's a different composite of things. And he said, well, what do you think about that pick? And I'd tell him, and he said, okay, I'm going to add a little more of this, or I'm going to do that. You know, it's kind of cool. I never thought I'd be working with people like that on guitars and strings. I have GHS strings. For years, I had my strings on my nylon strings. I have a wound G, you know, because they just sound real round sound, you know, and they sound great on the multi-act guitars. The multi-acts really fit this type of playing that I do. I still love an acoustic guitar. Like I said, I don't have time to do everything tonight. I know I can outplay your abilities to be able to stay and stand sitting as long as you have. But thank you so much for all you folks at home. Thank you very, very much. We're honored that you would tune in and come in and out. However you would look at it again, they'll archive it, I'm sure. But I'm so happy to be able to be affiliated with these guys because they're doing something different on the guitar and they're making them affordable. We were talking a while ago. I mean, next month I'm all over the world, all over the place with these guys, and I've been to Asia and Australia, and New Zealand. I'm going back to I'm going to the Czech Republic. I'm going all over Europe next month, and then all over Canada. And honestly, they're bigger in other parts of the world than they are in the United States, you know. And I said, more people should know about Godin because you've heard of them, but have you ever really played one? And so they're just really, really great. Here, would you like a Doyle Dykes thumb pick? This, I can't give you my Doyle Dykes Godin, but I can give you a pick because I need the other one at church this weekend. I'll be at Redlands at the Packing House if you want to come out Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. And I usually do a few songs, you know, and some of the finest people I've ever met. And I've been going over for many, many years, and they love music. They have a special guest in that they sponsor, and they bring in people from all over. Every week they have a special guest, every week. I don't know of any church ever that has ever done that, anywhere, but every week. And so I was there last Christmas, and they're having me back this weekend. I have some albums over here. I have one called Life Behind the Guitar, which is my brand new one. And everybody that knows me thinks I got my music from my dad's side because he was a guitar player. A lot of the influence in my life came from my mother's side as well. And my Uncle Doyle, in fact, as you can see, I was named after him. I always wanted people to hear him. When I was 4 years old, Dad recorded him, and I put as bonus tracks at the end of the record, I put that on there. And he's just him and a harmonica. And so it has me playing on there one song when I was 14. And so I was at Eric's studio, so I just played along with it, you know, and so it was a lot of fun. And I write songs for my kids and my grandkids. Life Behind the Guitar really is more focus on the life part than it is the guitar for me. And I wrote a little song for my little granddaughter. It's called Dancing Little Emmylou. Things like that. I just write for my kids and grandkids. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. Any other question from anyone out there before we go?
We do have, I don't know if you're open to another request, but we're getting a few requests for the White Rose.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's on the docket. Many thanks. Somebody who ran into you at LAX on your way here, apparently.
Oh.
They said they're happy to not only see you at the airport, but to watch.
Thanks for not getting my insurance company involved. No, I'm just kidding. No, how about that? Yeah, well, that's good. I saw Jeff Foxworthy. I didn't say that. I don't really know him, but anyway, everybody knows who he is. He's a funny guy. I saw him. He must be doing this thing around here somewhere. When I was with Taylor years ago, they said, Doyle, we want to do a signature model with you. And it was out for about 11 years, and it was very good. I mean, it was very successful all over the world. These guitars, it was amazing. I never dreamed anything like that would have happened. But they approached me to do that. And then they said, we want to do something besides say, your name up there. We want to do something else. And one of the guys said, well, what about a White Rose? Because your song White Rose for Heidi, and it kind of stuck. And then when there's a man named Larry Thomas, used to be with the Guitar Center. He was the CEO, and he retired, and they took him out of retirement, and he went to work with Fender as the CEO. And he asked if I would help out with their Gill brand. And they said, we want to do a signature guitar on you. And I said, really? And he said, well, it's got to have a white rose on it. And so Yuri Shishkov, one of their main Fender guys, you guys probably know about him. He's the one that makes those $200,000 guitars. And he designed the roses here, and Taylor's was up here. Well, when Godin said, well, you got to have white roses, all your guitars always have a white rose. Mr. Olson even made me a white rose guitar and put the beautiful white rose up there, gave it to me as a gift, and he turns people down. I think he said he turned 80 or 90 people down to build guitars. And his guitars are like $25,000. He said, I'm only drill building, they're like 20. I don't know why people pay me that much money, but they do. That's what he says. But he's an amazing man. But he put a white rose on my guitar. And then Godin, if you see here, and they said, we want it a little more subtle than the other guys. And so they just, they put two little white roses here on the 12th fret. And speaking of kids, and my wife and I have been married this month 45 years. And we have 4 children, Heidi, Holly, Haley, which was cute at the time, but it gets confusing. Even now it's confusing. Heidi, you, come here. And then Caleb, we changed it with him. But so it was late one night. I came in from a trip, and my wife, Rita, met me at the door. And we were high school sweethearts, but she gave me a kiss and a hug, said, good night. They're yours. And they were Heidi and Holly. Heidi was 4. Holly was 2. Those were only 2 kids we had in 1980. It was a long time ago. And so, y'all want to play? And so, oh, yeah. And so we played. And tell us a story. Now, it's too late for a story. Your mom would kill me if she knew we were up this late. And please, Daddy, well, just let's say our prayers. And so I said a prayer with them, and it was a little poem prayer. Anything to get them to go to sleep. You know, it was so late. And I felt kind of guilty about that. But Holly was gone. She was out before the end of the prayer. Heidi was wide awake. Daddy, do you think God would bring me something if we ask him? What is it you'd like to have? She said, I'd like to have a rose. You think he'd bring me one? 4.5-year-old kid. And I said, well, we'll ask him for a rose. And so we did. And I didn't think much about it until I walked back and I said, how come you want a rose so much? She says, because they're so pretty. I've always wanted one. And I'm thinking, all those years, huh? 4, year 4. But I didn't say that. But so I'll never forget the next night I told them a story. We had a little more time and we were going to say our prayers, and Heidi her hands start shaking. What's wrong, Heidi? How come God didn't bring my rose? You think you forgot? And what do you say, your little girl's a God question? I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm just a guitar player. But how come God didn't bring my rose? And so I just said, well, you know, we didn't mention the color of that rose. Well, did he need to know that? I said, well, maybe he did. She says, well, I was thinking of a white one. She wiped her tears. She said, we need to ask him. We better ask him again. And I looked at her. I thought, a white one. Gee, those are hard to find. You know, you just go down to Safeway or whatever and pick up a white rose. You didn't then. You had to go to a florist. I had to go out of town the next day. I'm thinking, okay. And we asked God for a white rose. And so I couldn't hardly sleep thinking about it. I got up the next morning, though, and I thought, wow, the white rose. It was immediately on my mind. And I thought I could call a florist down the street, or I asked a friend to drop one by. I had to go out of town to this little church. I didn't do any of that. I just knew she's too inquisitive, she would know. And so I went to this little church, little small place, little center aisle, just 2 little sections. And after the service, I played my heart out, but I'd never been there before. But I had met the pastor and his wife because she was a gospel singer, and that's how I met them. They said, would you ever come to our church? I said, sure. And so anyway, after church, he said, well, join us for refreshments. And I said, I'll be right over. I'll just put my guitars away. And no one was in the building. I was by myself, and they lived next door. And so all of a sudden, this little lady burst through the back door. Are you Doyle Dykes? I said, yes. She says, God told me to bring you something from my garden. And she had these big, thick glasses on, you know. She walks up to me, and I said, really? And I was putting the guitar down, and she says, I was in my garden. Are you Doyle Dykes? I said, yes, ma'am. And she asked me about 3 times. Well, God told me to bring this to church. He told me to give it to you. And I said, okay. And she handed it to me. It was in a little foil package. And I said, well, I'll enjoy eating this from your garden. And she said, well, I wouldn't eat it. You better look at it. And she stood there looking at me with these big, thick glasses. And I peeled the little foil, and there was one little white rose. And it was easy to see that she was autistic. But I'll never, ever forget this. And so oftentimes it's that kind of person that's more in tune, it seems. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, this isn't mine. And well, God told me to bring that to you, Brother Dykes. She called me Brother Dykes. That's what everybody called each other, Brother Dykes or Sister this. And I said, okay. And I said, he did, I think, and I told her the story and the whole. And she said, well, that's nice. And just turned and started walking out like, okay. And I'm thinking, are you an angel or something? You know, and I thought maybe she'll float any second. And so, but she didn't. I remember getting that rose to Heidi. I'll never forget it. She jumped out and ran out into my van, and I pulled in the driveway of our little house when I got home. Had that rose in that same package. I kept it in water all night. She jumped up in my lap, gave me a big hug. I said, there's a present for you, Heidi. I couldn't wait for her to see it. She said, for me? And she took it. She says, it's my rose, isn't it? And she says, I knew he'd bring it. And she looked at it, and it's white. And she starts running in the house. Mommy, Mommy, God brung my rose. And she said it just like that. God brung my rose. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. I remember going to Martin Guitars a few years ago when Dick Boak was still the artist guy. Dick took me all over the factory, and he took me through their beautiful, who doesn't love Martin Guitars? It's one of the most beautiful names in the world. And all these old guitars from their museum. And he said, here's one, Doyle, I'd like for you to play it. It's a pre-war Deep 18. Oh, wow. And it was just worth a lot of money. And he said, well, here's one, it's a D45, pre-war. I played it. He said, now, Doyle, here's the most expensive guitar in the house. And he took it out, and my heart jumped when I saw it. It was an OM 45 Deluxe. Only a few of them were made, 1938. It was just like new. I mean, it was so well preserved. And he said, play it. I said, I can't do that. He says, I want you to play it. And I began to play that, and all of a sudden there's a big crowd of people around me, you know, and everybody's just, it was about the guitar. And I can't believe you even let me play that. And when I left, to make a long story short, if it's not too late, I'm thinking, I'm sitting at the four-way stop sign. There's a stop sign in front of Martin, and I'm thinking, that's one of the most precious, certainly the most, it was worth $3 million. The most expensive thing I've ever held, and one of the most precious besides my own kids when they were born that I've ever held in my hand. And then I happened to think, except for one thing, and it wasn't preserved very long, just a few days, it was gone. It didn't last very long, but in its own way it was more beautiful and more meaningful to me. Sometimes it's those little things in life that mean the most, that you'll never forget. I've told that story all over the world, and like I said, it's sort of been preserved through my favorite thing, through guitars around the world. This is White Rose for Heidi. Thank you so much, Pitbull Audio. Let's hear it for them tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for putting this on, streaming this live, and for the folks that have responded with questions. And thank you so much for you folks coming out here and in this area tonight. I really appreciate you being here. And Lucas, thank you. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for putting this together. It was a funny little story. I have a son-in-law named Lucas. I call him Boomer, and in my phone I forgot I put Boomer in there because when he came back from Iraq, he sold fireworks. And that was the first job he had, so I just called him Boomer. I thought it was funny. And so, but I forgot I had his phone, but I put Lucas, and I thought, and I forgot I had him as Boomer. So I said, hey, Lucas, do you have any, he's a barber now. I said, do you have any, how much time, I mean, what's a waiting time look now? And I didn't realize I texted him. And he's in California. He said, well, I think we have Pitbull. I think they've confirmed for the 17th. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And he was wondering what I was talking about. So anyway, all good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. God bless you guys. Thank you.